Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this tutorial series, we are creating this image slider over here using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And here we can see that we can click on this next and previous buttons to go to the next and previous slides. And we also have these navigation dots working alright. Now in the previous video, we created the UI of this slider and this is how it looks. We haven't added any functionality over here. So we will start adding the functionality in this video. Let's get started. Alright, so this is the source code, and the first thing we will do is we will add some animations to these text. So if you go back over here, we can see that we have this animation for this title and this paragraph. So for that, let's go back and let's go back to our CSS file and let's add some keyframes. So we can just type add keyframes, and for the name, let's name it fade in up, and let's start from opacity of 0 and translate y of 20 pixels, and let's go to opacity of 1 and translate y of 0. So this will be the animation where the element starts from the bottom and goes up, and it also has an opacity of 0 at the beginning. Right, now we need to add this fade in up animation to the slide title and the description. So here we have the title and the description. So here let's type animation fade in up, and let's set the duration to 0.8 seconds, which is 800 milliseconds. And for the easing function, let's tap ease out and let's tap forward so that the animation stays in the last state. And let's add a little bit of animation delay. So let's tap animation delay of 0.4 seconds. Let's copy the same thing over here and let's paste it down here for the description. And now let's go back and let's reload this page. And here we can see we have the animation. Let's go back over here and let's add some more delay for the description. So here just type 0.3 seconds and here let's type 0.5 seconds. And by default, the opacity should be 0 for both of these. So let's go back over here. And here let's set the opacity to 0. And for the description also, let's set the opacity to 0. And now we can see that we have the correct animation being displayed over here. Right, now the next thing we will do is we will add these navigation dots over here. So for that, first of all, let's add some CSS for that. And let's add a comment navigation dots. And if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see that we have created this division, and it has this class of slider nav. And we're going to add the navigation dots inside here. So let's add some styles to that. Let's tap slider nav and we'll set the position to absolute, and we will set the bottom position to 20 pixels, and let's set the left position to 50%, and let's tap translate x to negative 50% so that it is exactly in the center. And this slider nav, we will have divisions with class of navigation dot or nav dot. So let's add that over here just to test our CSS. So let's create a division with the class of nav dot. Let's duplicate it a couple more times and let's go back over here and let's target the nav dot, and here let's go ahead and type width and let's set it to 8 pixels. Let's set the height to 8 pixels as well. Let's set the border radius to 50% so that we have round shape, and let's set the background color to RGBA 255, 255, 255 and 0.5 for the opacity. And let's set the cursor to pointer so that when you hover over this dots, we have the cursor. And we'll also have smooth transition for this animation. So when we change the active state, we need to have smooth transition. So for that, let's go back over here and let's tap transition and let's set it to all 0.3 seconds ease. And now we need to have all these dots one next to the other. So here for the parent element, let's type display of flex gap of 8 pixels, and let's set the z index to 2 so that it's above everything else. And now we can see that we have these navigation dots displayed over here. Now for the active navigation dot, we need to have a different styling. So let's tap nav dot active, and here let's set the background color to white, and let's set the transform to scale of 1.2. So the active navigation dot will be a little bigger. So let's go back over here and let's add the active class over here for the first one. Now we can see that this one is active. So in this way, we need to change the active class dynamically using JavaScript. So now let's go ahead and delete all of this, and we will generate these nav dots using JavaScript. So we have already linked our JavaScript file over here in the index.html file. So let's go to the main.js file And first of all, let's target some elements. First, we need to target the slide. So here we can see that we have all these slide divisions. This is one slide division, this is another. So let's target all these slides. So let's type const slides equals document.querySelector all, and we have a class of slide. And now let's target the slide nav, which has this class of slider nav. So let's type const slider nav equals document.querySelector slider nav. And now we'll also create a variable to keep track of our current slide. So let's type current slide equals 0 by default. And now we need to loop through each of the slides that we have inside here, and we need to create navigation dots for all of that. So let's type slides dot for each, and in this we need to get the index. So for the first argument, I'll just type underscore, and for the second one let's type index, and let's create this function over here. And first of all, let's create a dot. So let's type const dot equals document dot create element, and we'll create a div element, and we need to add a class of nav dot to that. So let's type dot dot class list dot add nav dot, and now let's type if index is equal to 0, then let's type dot dot class list dot add, and here let's type active. So it will set the active state for the first dot, and then we need to add an event listener for each of the dots. So for now I'll just type dot dot add event listener, and let's type click over here, and for now I'll just leave it blank. And then after that, let's add this dot to the slider nav. So for that, let's type slider nav dot append child, and here let's type dot. So now if we go back to our slider, here we can see that we have all the dots displayed. So now if we increase one more slide, so I'll just copy this and paste it down here. Now we can see that there are 5 dots. So these dots are dynamically created using JavaScript. Right now, let's add the functionality of going to the next and the previous slides. So here in the main.js file, let's create some functions for that. So let's create a function called handle next slide. Now in this function, we'll just go to the next slide. So for that also, we'll create one more function. So let's type function go to slide, and here we'll get an argument. Let's call it index. And what we'll simply do over here is that we'll set the current index, which we have set over here at the beginning, and we'll set it to the index. So let's type equals index. And now we also need to check whether the index is greater than the actual number of slides. So for that, let's create one more variable over here, and let's call it slide count, and let's set it equal to slides, which is this constant over here, and we'll just get the length. So let's type length over here. And now here we need to type index plus slide count modulo slide count. So this will make sure that the index is not greater than the actual number of slides. And now what we will simply do is that we'll just move this slider to the left so that we have the next slide being displayed. Because if we go back to our style.css file, and if I just remove the overflow hidden from here, we can see that all these images are displayed one next to the other. So we just need to move these images to the left so that the next slide is being displayed. So now let's go back over here, and let's go to our main.js file, and we need to target the slider. So we have this slider, and it has this class of slider. So let's go back over here, and let's target the slider. I'll just type const slider equals document.querySelector slider, and here let's go ahead and type slider.style.transform equals, and here we'll just add the value. So let's type translate x, and here we'll just add this current slide variable. So let's type $symbol curly braces, and here let's type current slide, and this should be a negative value because we need to move to the left. So let's type minus current slide times 100. So if you want to go to the fourth slide, we need to move it 400%. So that's why we are adding this times 100. And then at the end, let's type %. So this will move the slide to the left. And then we also need to update the dots. So here we can see that we are creating the dots for each of the slides. So here let's create a function called update dots. So let's type function update dots. And here let's go ahead and type dots dot for each. Now for each of the dot, I'll just call it dot. And let's also get the index, and let's create this arrow function over here. And here we'll just go ahead and type dot class list toggle, and we'll just add the active class if the index is equal to the current slide. And this will update the dots according to our current slide. And then here we can go ahead and call the function update dots. And now here in this handle next slide function, we can just go ahead and call the go to slide function and just pass the current slide plus 1. And let's create another function for handle previous slide. And here let's type go to slide and let's type current slide minus 1. So this will go to the previous slide. And now let's add event listeners to the next and the previous button. So here we can see that we have these divisions with the class of prev and next. So let's target these divisions. Here I'll just type const prev button equals document.querySelector prev and const next btn equals document.querySelector next. And here let's go ahead and type prev dot add event listener and let's listen for the click event. And here when we click on the previous button, we need to go to the previous slide. So let's type handle prev slide, and for the next button we'll add an event listener and let's type click, and let's go to the next slide. So let's type handle next slide. And now let's go back to our website, and now if you click on the next button, we go to the next slide and we go to the previous slide over here, and the dots are not being updated, so we'll fix that as well. But for now we'll just fix the animation. So if you go to the next slide, we need to smoothly go to the next slide. So for that, let's go back to our slider, and for the slider we need to add a transition. So here for the slider, let's go ahead and type transition transform 0.5 seconds for the duration, and let's type ease in out. And now if you click on the next and the previous buttons, we have the slide moving correctly. And now let's fix this active states for the dots. So let's go back. If you go to the main.js file, here we can see that we are writing this code inside update dots, but we haven't referenced this dots. So for that, let's reference that. Here let's go ahead and type const dots equals document.querySelector all, and let's type nav dot over here. So now it will target the dots and it will display the correct active state. So let's go back over here and let's go to the next slide, and now we can see that the dots are updating correctly. Now if you click on any of these dots, we are not going to that slide. So for that, let's go back over here, and here in the event listener, let's go ahead and type go to slide, and here we'll just go to the index. So now when we click on any of these dots, we'll go to that slide. So let's click on this dot and we go to that slide, and the active state is also updating correctly, and the next and the previous buttons are also working correctly. So that's basically it with the basic functionality of our slider. Now in the next video we will improve this further, and right now if you go ahead and reload this page, we have the animation over here, but if you go to the next slide, we don't have the animation being displayed over here. So we'll fix that in the next video, and we'll also add the functionality where the slide should automatically go to the next slides, and when you hover over this, the slide should stop auto advancing. So we will add that functionality in the next video as well. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below, and if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.